All right, class. Well, here we go. Week 6. Believe it or not, we have 3 more weeks left in the term, and then freedom. I guess that means for you for the summer, hopefully. We have a good amount of content to cover this week. Sorry about last week. I'm not sure what happened. There were some glitches, some things that were not working out well, some things that were off as far as the assignments. Something happened, and so we just gave you some time back to yourself that week. Hopefully that is helpful. The one thing you'll notice is if you go to the multimedia section, I did take a video that should have been watched last week from Dr. Ryan Hartwig, and you will watch that in addition to a snippet from Jiro, I think that's how you say it, Dreams of Sushi. So I'm not sure if you have seen that film. It's a great movie on Netflix. That if you have not seen is definitely worth your while. There's an article that you'll read, and then there's that little snippet from the movie itself that you'll watch in addition to this video from Dr. Ryan Hartwig. A couple things to keep in mind for this, actually last week and then this week, the things that you didn't end up doing because of the time that I gave back to you in last unit, in Unit 6, I will give you credit for those, okay? So don't worry about missing anything. In fact, because there's been a couple of misses here and there with the course, I'm going to be giving everybody in the class 5 points of extra credit in addition to full credit for the assignments that should have taken place, last week, okay? So that should, if you're concerned about your grade, that should bring you up a little bit and help you out with where you may have been to be in hopefully a better spot by the end of this week. Okay, so all full credit for last week, and then I'll give you 5 additional extra credit points as well. I hope you've enjoyed the reading. I'm reading through your discussion posts and your conversations there, and it would appear that that is the case. I don't know how you can go wrong with Jamie Smith's book and David Brooks. Brooks has actually just written a new book. He kind of, in some ways, documents, in some ways, again, his journey to faith. And so there's some interesting concepts there. If you are a fan of what you've read in The Road to Character, I might encourage you to check out his latest book. In fact, I would encourage you to check out everything he's written. I think he's an excellent writer. I think he's a great thinker. And I think that he's someone that is really kind of deeply thinking what is missing from society, from a virtues, from a value standpoint, from a meaning standpoint, from a character development standpoint. You don't have to look very hard, far, or long before you realize that our society is there's just a dearth of character. There's a void of value and virtue, and people are living for things that they don't even know what they're living for. In fact, I have 4 young children. I think I may have mentioned that. And our conversation on multiple different occasions this past weekend was just about the things that people are pursuing to make them feel like they're enough. I don't know if you've seen or heard the graduation talk from David Foster Wallace, but it's a great talk, and actually he ended up taking his life several years back, and I think it was probably just a few weeks before he ended up committing suicide, that he gave this great graduation speech, commencement speech, and he talked about the fact that everything so everybody worships everything. Everybody worships. So, the focus of our worship is what's different. And he says everything will eat you alive except for a God, right? So in our circumstances, in our reality, I would say everything will eat you alive except for the God. He says a godlike figure. This is a person who is strongly atheist, and so his approach and his perspective is not that of a Christian. But yet he's talking about the fact, and he's basically he's I think in many ways he's confirming what James K. Smith has talked about, that we all worship something. Out of what we worship comes the way that we think, the way that we act, and so forth. But very few things, in fact, only one thing will leave us satisfied. Only one thing will leave us feeling like we are enough. And so I think Brooks he's also on that track as well in his thinking. Living in New York City, working in the midst of the chaos of the New York Times, being just kind of inundated with all things media and how we appear, and if you were to ask somebody, what is it that you value, they may not really know, or what values do you live by, or what do you see as virtuous? And I think these days we have a very different take on virtue that I think we need to get back to our old definition, our old ways of believing and living out what what virtuous living really is. So lots of great content so far. Thanks for your contributions. I hope you've enjoyed the reading and the discussions and the questions. This week you'll spend a couple of chapters with David Brooks, once again, chapters 4 and 5, so pages 74 through 129. And then there's a little blog on the website medium.com that you'll read on Jiro Dreams of Sushi. And what I'm going to have you do is, like I mentioned, watch that video from Dr. Hartwig in addition to the other video, the little snippet from Jiro Dreams of Sushi. And then you have a final assignment that's going to talk about, your final paper talks about some classics. I'm going to give you a couple of articles that you'll read. So you're not going to actually read books. I'm just going to give you just a few brief articles to choose from. So you can choose from, I think I'm going to give you, there's 4 students in the class, so probably I'm going to give you 4 different articles for you to read. Something from James McGregor Byrne, some Robert Greenleaf, some classics, so servant leadership and transformational leadership. So as we read about these ideas, or even I've got a couple other folks that I want to give you as well. These kind of giants in the field of leadership studies that you can read about from them, and then that will be what you can choose from. Only one article, and you'll incorporate that into your final paper. Okay. The other things that we have due this week, in addition to the discussion where you'll talk about Dorothy Day, and you'll read more on Dorothy Day in these chapters from Brooks, you will also be completing your film analysis paper. Okay, so I haven't heard from you on this, so my assumption is that everything is hunky-dory with this. This is any film that you'd like to watch. You are free to choose whatever film that you want to view. And so if you look then into the actual assignments tab in Canvas, it says this, and I'll go over it really quickly. It says write a 4 to 6 page paper through the lens of one virtue we studied in class, okay? Using supporting evidence with course text, supplemental readings, and lecture content. Okay? Summarize the film, focusing on a character or two, and explain how their behavior in light of the story exemplifies virtue at a high level. What challenges came as a result of the virtue being lived? Finally, how can your film and the subsequent values and virtues in the film be used as a framework for responding to current leadership crises and issues in the world today? Use examples in the film to support connections to current issues and your analysis for effective leadership practice today. Okay, so here's the deal. This is what I was trying to get at earlier. I hope that a class like this helps you to see the world through the lens of what we're talking about, what we're learning, what we're studying. I teach career development classes, and I tell my students I want them to see the world through the lens of career development. I want them to be viewing films and reading books and thinking, how can I use this? How can I incorporate this into my work in career development? When you're studying leadership, I want my students, I want you to be thinking about how does this play into the world of leadership? I want you to see the leadership, the theories and the frameworks coming to life in the things that you see around us, right? Maybe it's the bosses with whom you, or for whom you work, or the way that other bosses might treat your colleagues or your friends or your family members. You hear about these things, right? You're the person that people come to, and I cannot believe what happened at work. And you go, wow, I just was reading about that. That person or those people, they may be missing something like this. So when I was studying leadership and then was really kind of just in the minutia of leadership studies and teaching this all the time, I was listening to podcasts and sermons and watching films and having conversations and reading magazine articles and books and all of these things and thinking, I see leadership. And leadership was so prominent, it was at the forefront of my mind. And now these days, with the majority of my time being spent doing career development work, I see career development work all the time. Or when my focus is on church work or church planting or missional living, I'm seeing, whatever the thing on the forefront of my mind is, I'm seeing the world through that lens. And so what a better lens to view, there is no better lens to view the world than that which we're talking about, we're studying in this class, values and virtues. And probably, unfortunately, you'll spend more time seeing the lack of values, the lack of virtue, as we talked about earlier. But then I hope what will happen is you will say, okay, so now I know what my job is, and my job is to make sure that I can infuse the culture around me, my family, my society, my workplace, with these really important character-laden values and virtues, because we believe that what we're talking about in this class is going to make society a better place, right? So that's the hope, right? It's going to lead us on a road maybe to character, or hopefully in some ways what we're seeing is a need for us to be led back to character, as David Brooks is talking about, all right? So be thinking about that. And you've got a full week to watch a video, hour and a half, 2 hour movie, and then you'll write your paper 4 to 6 pages. Most of them end up being 4 pages, but here's the thing. Remember that what you're writing, don't look for a page count, right? So I don't look for, minimum 4 pages. I'm looking for you to articulate the point. And I would argue that if you're going to do the assignment well, you're going to actually be closer to the 6-page count than you will be the 4-page count, all right? So be thinking about that as you're writing the paper. Make sure you proofread it, and then I would encourage you to proofread it, and then I would encourage you to proofread it again, walk away, proofread it again, maybe have a friend or a family member read it for you, then come back. Don't submit it until it's been proofread and it's written really well. Remember, APA, you'll submit it accordingly as it's listed out in Canvas itself. If you have any questions, please let me know. And remember, I'm giving you full credit for the points that were missed last week, and then I'm giving an additional 5 points of extra credit simply because there's been some hiccups along the way for the class. All right, so if you have any questions, let me know how I can help. You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. Hope it's been a great learning experience for you. Really enjoying hearing from you and kind of getting to see how you think about these things and these topics. Have a great week 6, and we will look forward to seeing you online.